Hi, welcome to another Musings from Oundle Baptist Church. I'm Martin, I'm the minister for the church. It's good to have you with us today. And firstly, an apology. If you've been following and looking for the Musings, you'll know that we didn't put one up last week. That's my fault. There's too many other things going on and we didn't manage to get one out. So you're going to get a double whammy this week, but hopefully in the same amount of time. Now, we've been using these musings as a chance to reflect on what we've been thinking about on Sundays. And over the last couple of weeks, we've been thinking about what it means to live life after exile. And that comes from this idea that I feel quite strongly that the church perhaps has been in a period of exile, certainly for the last 18 months, 2 years during the whole of COVID, but maybe even longer, when the church has perhaps stopped responding to the things that God has been asking of us, stopped behaving in the way that God wants his church to behave. And perhaps even over these last 2 years, God has put the brakes on church and said, right, if this year you're not going to listen to me, we'll do things in different ways. And you'll know all across the country, churches were having to stop, to close their doors, to stop meeting in public, to switch to online, to work out ways of connecting with each other and to continue to share God's message. And I believe that was a real opportunity for churches to stop and assess and review and rethink what it is that God was asking of his church, of his people, as they seek to live out their faith and share with the people around them. And so for me, these past 18 months, 2 years has been perhaps this period of exile as we've had to rediscover what it is God wants us to do. And as we come out of exile, as the churches are opening up again, as programs are beginning again, as life returns to some kind of normality, whatever that might mean for you, then I think this is an opportunity that God is saying, look, this is a new opportunity, a new start to do things in a different way, to be the church that I want you to be. And what does that really look like? That's what we've been exploring. And we've been using some of the minor prophets to do that. Particularly, we've been looking at Zechariah, but we've also thrown in, particularly coming up, you're going to see a little bit of Haggai and a little bit of Zephaniah as well. But the idea being, as the people return from exile under different leaders to come back and rebuild, particularly under a guy called Zerubbabel, who was tasked by God to rebuild the temple, we kind of get a sense of what God is saying to the people and the challenges that are being laid out to the people of God to rebuild and to move forward. Now they have this new opportunity. And we've based this around an image that I saw at a conference a few years ago. It's around 3 chairs. And you have basically the 3 chairs set up on the stage. One which was the chair of the past, as it were, looking backwards, 1 chair of the future, looking forwards, and 1 chair in the middle, which was the now chair. And the idea being that if we're not careful, we can find ourselves sitting in the wrong chairs. And the idea was that if you sit in the chair that always looks backward, the chair that always looks to the past, then your whole life is looking at where you've been or what's happened. And you can find yourself just reflecting on, well, we did that in the past, or it looked like that, or church was like this, or we behaved in this way, or we did these things, and weren't we successful when? And if we're not careful, we just focus so much on what's been that we miss what God is doing now. And the other way around as well is if we spend all our time in the chair for the future, just looking at all that God might want us to do, and we just spend our time thinking of the next idea or what we think God is asking of us to do, then we spend all our time looking that way and not looking at what God is doing in the here and now and what God is inviting his church and us as his people to get involved in. And so we've been reflecting over these past few weeks on trying to live in the now. What does God say to his people now? Yes, he wants us to look back and be reminded of the good stuff that he's done for us, to be reminded of his faithfulness and his love and his care for his people and his protection. But he doesn't want us to get stuck there. So remember but don't linger, I guess, was the phrase we were thinking about. Remember the past, remember the good stuff, remember what God has done and his faithfulness, but don't linger there, don't get stuck in the past. And also don't daydream for the future. Just keep looking at what you think God might be calling us to and where we should be going and the next big idea and the next big wave of stuff that the church should be getting involved in. But rather, live in the now, but look to the future. Live in the now and see what God is doing for his people now and what God wants us to be involved in. And I think that's a really exciting thing for the church to do as we reimagine what church can be like, as we reimagine what God is asking of us to be doing, and the people he wants us to connect with, and how he wants us to connect. That's for me the challenge of the church as we move out of this period, as we learn to regrow, as we learn to live again as the people of God. And sure, church is going to look different. People are different. The makeup of our churches is going to be different. People have moved on. People have got new ways of doing things. People have found another path to take that may not include our church or the church where you worship, and we have to be okay with that. We have to allow people to move to do what God is doing for them. And as we look at our church, it will look quite different, I think. But that's not a bad thing, because actually I think God is saying, I am doing something new. Join me now to see what I'm doing and be involved in the new that I'm doing. So think about exile. Think about where you are in God's story. Think about what God might be asking of you. Don't get caught up looking backwards all the time to what has been done in the past, or where you miss the things from the past. And don't just get caught daydreaming. Look into the future and miss what God is doing for you and for his church right here, right now, in this very moment. So if you're free on Sunday, I'd invite you to join us on Sunday as we look for the last of these Life After Exile series. And we're going to be thinking about the remnant, the idea of those of us that are left getting involved and getting on with what God has in store for us. So you can join us online. You can find the link on our website to the Zoom, and you can join us on Zoom, or if you're in Oundle, you can join us in person. But I'll be back again next week just to reflect a little bit more about what it means to live life after exile. Thanks for joining us today.